I'm Rick Munn. This is No Risk, No Reward Media, and I'm very happy to be joined again this morning by Mr. Lee Harris. Lee is an independent broadcaster and, political commentator based in the UK. It's very nice to have him back on again. Lee, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. Bit throaty after a bad cough last night, but I'm okay and delighted to be here.
Well, nice to see you again, and a lot of water passing under the bridge as it does, not just since the last time we spoke, which was about 2 weeks ago, but even over the weekend, even since yesterday, a lot happening in the political arena, especially concerning the UK. And I want to zone in a little bit on some of the events that have happened over the weekend and some of the events that have happened yesterday and today in terms of Syria and also in terms of some car crash interviews that we've seen on TV involving a certain Angela Rayner, or Raver, as she's known to her friends. She's fond of a little rave up in an Ibiza nightclub from time to time. I know you've been keeping an eye on things. What do you make of Rayner's appearances over the last few weeks? Is that one of the reasons why maybe we haven't seen so much of her since they've been keeping her in a box?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it's whenever they wheel out Angela Rayner in front of the media, especially at the weekends on a Sunday. You know there's going to be something good in it for Car Crash TV. So she did not disappoint. This weekend we had a couple of in fact we had a couple of interviews, and one that was not just this weekend but sort of middle of last week as well. And the one that we had this weekend was where she was sat down with Trevor Phillips from Sky News, and he put the pressure on regarding house building. And it just turned out to be a complete car crash. And she was pushed on the amount of houses that she can actually get built, and was given some scenarios that in my view, as I said to you before we started, she has got a habit of just telling interviewers what she wants to be the case, or what she wants to be the reality, without actually talking based in reality. She basically just tells people exactly what they want to hear, which is exactly what she was doing with Trevor Phillips. And with Trevor Phillips, he directly gave her a scenario. So he said to her, with all this house building, you've got your housing plan, they've done their consultation, this local council, but they've told you point blank, we're not building houses here or here or here. What are you going to do in that situation? And she basically just couldn't really answer the question. She stuttered and basically, I suppose, if fair to her, the only way that she kind of answered it was by saying, they'll be mandated to do it. They'll have no choice. Basically, they'll have to do what we say. But in reality, everyone knows that that's not going to be the case, unless she's going to physically strong arm them. But it's a very uncomfortable interview, and the bit that I got it from the most, not just with this interview but other interviews. Angela Rayner she hasn't got the intellectual capacity. I'm sure she's a lovely person, but she just hasn't got the intellectual capacity to keep kind of telling fibs correctly. If you're going to, all politicians lie, all politicians embellish, but you've got to have a certain amount of intelligence to make sure that those lies and embellishments all kind of like fit together properly. So if you're challenged about each one of them individually, you can keep that lie or embellishment going, even if it's only a kind of white lie. With Angela Rayner, she just doesn't have the capacity, the mental capacity to do that properly. So she immediately stumbles. So one of the things that really made me laugh was at the beginning of the interview. I have to bring up my tweet to word it correctly. So it was very painful to watch, right? Because right at the start of the interview, she was saying, we've got a housing crisis. She point blank was saying, the whole beginning of the interview was, we need to build more houses. We've got a housing crisis. Of course, she's absolutely right. And then later in the interview, when she was asked about 2.5 million migrants that were going to be taking up some of that housing, she said, we don't have a housing crisis. There's plenty of housing. This is what I mean about her not having the intellectual capacity to tell a proper lie or embellish proper, or at least, if you want something to be true, say it without stuttering. And she just completely falls over herself every single time.
The other thing as well, that's a good case in point, because the flip flopping that was done just on that subject alone starts off by saying we have a terrible crisis there, and then whenever she was pushed on, well, what about the people that are coming in? Where are you going to put them? Well, there's plenty of houses to go around. So within literally the space of 2 minutes, it went from a housing crisis. There's plenty of houses to go around. Not really a problem at all. Really, really cringe. Really,
Yeah.
really cringe. Another thing that she did was backpedal yet again. Another Labour promise that they're backpedaling on or breaking. Let's call a spade a spade. They're breaking electoral promises here. Said there would be priority housing given, social housing would be given to British citizens as a priority rather than immigrants. Looks like that's not going to be the case anymore. And she even manages to bring in small animals, little water dwelling animals in the shape and form of newts. She managed to
Yeah.
bring newts into that interview to say that it's not right
You
that
don't care about newts. You
people
don't care.
should people should not be kept out of housing because of newts. Well, they're
I
being
know.
kept out of housing because of a hell of a lot more than newts,
I
although
was going to say.
they are playing their part too. But bizarro, I mean, completely
Yeah.
bizarre to
I,
throw in migrants plus British people, social housing. There's a crisis, there's no crisis. And by the way, it's not right that newts should keep people out of houses. Listen, they're not building houses. Am I getting this wrong, or have they actually built anything yet? Because they have this promise, as you know, when we did a little bit of number crunching before we went to air here, as it were, today. They have a target of 1.5 million homes that they say they're going to build over the next 5 years to deal with this crisis. But then again, there
impossible.
is no crisis, but there's a crisis. So
Yeah.
that equates to about 6,000 houses a week. So they've been in power now for what? 22 weeks ish. So that by my mathematics, that makes for about, they should have built 128,000.
Yeah.
128,000. How many are you aware of that they've actually built?
Zero so far. I mean, look, let's just be fair to Angela Rayner and the Labour Party. We do need more housing, right? There's absolutely no doubt about it. And with regards to the whole newts thing, I think she actually has a point. That's about the only positive thing that I can say about the whole thing. On the flip side of that, as you've just pointed out, the mathematics just aren't based in any form of reality. That this is why it annoys me so much that they play us all like fools, basically, as if we think they're going to actually build 1.5 million homes in the space of time that they're going to do it. And like you said, they do not lay the Labour Party cannot and will not accept that mass migration is a problem. To them, it's there is just no problem. They will not acknowledge it as an issue. This is why she fell over herself when Trevor Phillips, pushed her on the 2.5 million migrants that are expected to get some of this housing, and she ends up flailing by saying there is no housing crisis right after she said there is a crisis, because she hasn't got the intellectual capacity. And not just her, all of the Labour Party will not face up to the fact that pretty much the driving issue that we have with our housing crisis is uncontrolled mass migration, and the amount of people that require housing is simple supply and demand. And Labour's underlying attitude towards all of this is what problem? They've told us for years. I mean, I said to you earlier, I was thinking back to an interview that Angela Rayner did with Andrew Marr on the run up to the Brexit campaign, and it sticks in my mind because to me it was the kind of pinnacle of what Labour are when it comes to mass migration. And she was asked, you're being described as the party of open borders, which we all know that they are. What's your take on mass migration? Have we got too many people coming in, etc.? And her response to it was instant. It was knee jerk. And to be fair to Angela Rayner, it's not just her that's done this. They don't want to talk about the actual nuts and bolts of what's happening with migration, so they go on to touchy-feely things like feelings. So she was basically, so her response and other people's response have been, we're not going to talk about that specifically, but when we talk about migration, we're going to be nice. We're not going to demonize migrants. We're not going to say anything nasty about migrants. We're going to be nice to migrants, without actually talking about the physical logistical issues that 700, or it's not 700, a million people, what is it, in 2023 net came to this country. They just will not face up to that reality. And that's why they keep falling over, especially Angela Rayner, because like I said, you've got to be smart, you've got to be sharp to keep up these embellished white lies or just actual lies that they're telling about how many houses they're going to build. But they cannot, they're ideologically misaligned to where the public are on immigration, and that's why they struggle.
Yeah, and again, it is important to keep tabs on these figures because if this was a business, if you and I decided to start a business today, Lee, and the business was in house building, and we said to our contractor, listen, we will deliver 1.5 million homes for you over the next 5 years, there would be an expectation that there would be some kind of regularity in the supply of those
There'll be
homes,
some
not just
milestones set.
yeah, there would be some milestones. Now I get, okay, they've just came into power on July the 4th, or July the 4th, they came into power. They have to start, assembling their policies, but we're now pushing into 2025. We're into the middle of December now, 2024. You would think after 5.5 months, they would have had the ball rolling by now, because if they don't, effectively, it's going to be 6 months into this 5 year tenure of theirs if they see out their full term, and they're going to have zilch to show for it. So if you sit down, if you and I in our house building project were to sit down, after 6 months for a review, and they would say, well, guys, Munn and Harris house building, we would have expected to see 150,000 houses by now. Where are we on that?
Yeah.
Well, we haven't even laid a foundation for one yet. Surely heads would roll or questions would be asked, or the validity of our contract or would be in question.
They've got no plan. They weren't prepared for government. I mean, you could say they did have a slight plan. In their manifesto, they did talk about house building, to be fair, and planning reform. But as I said earlier, it's all based in fictitious, I want that to happen, rather than the actual reality of whether they can make things happen. But it's a running theme with this Labour Party. I mean, talk about Angela Rayner. There was another interview that she did. It was last week, tail of last week, with regards to her kind of ludicrous, growth-destroying, union-inspired employment bill. She was asked if she could name a single company that supported it, and she couldn't name a single one. So the lack of professionalism and forethought and planning, they are basically, I know this has been said many times, but it is very, very true. They're not prepared for government. They're an opposition party. They've spent the last, 13 years shouting from the sidelines, which I know is an unfair criticism, because that's where they were, that's where they are. But it's true. They were sat, shouting from the sidelines, being as awkward and difficult as they can. They didn't actually have a realistic plan for government, and that is becoming apparent across all aspects of that. I mean, you could even sort of go back to Keir Starmer himself. He's just had to do a blooming reset or a relaunch after 5 months of being in government. The whole thing's been such an utter, unmitigated disaster that he's had to do a complete, and that relaunch itself. I mean, I don't know if
It was bad. It was bad. In
Stop
fact,
me if I'm going off on a tangent.
He would have been better doing nothing, because his attempted reset was worse than the first launch back in July. It seems to be they're stumbling literally from one crisis to another, and as more time elapses, they're not finding their feet. They're not getting into their groove. Effectively, if anything, the wheels are starting to come off the vehicle.
That's what's happening. The wheels are coming off.
Wheel nut at a time. Okay, and another thing,
one wing nut at a time.
One wing nut. Yeah, there's a lot of wing nuts in the Labour Party. And when you talked about a plan as well, I was thinking back to the days of Blackadder. When Baldrick came up with a cunning plan. I have a cunning plan. That it's like a Rayner-esque type plan. I've got a plan. Well, I don't know what it means, but I've got a cunning plan. It's almost slapstick comedy-esque at the minute,
and it's every single day. It is every. I mean, look at Lammy again. So again, not really good. This is quite on topic. Was just yesterday we had the announcement about what was happening in Syria, and he got up in the Commons, and Richard Tice asked him point blank, a very fair question: is the UK going to look at suspending asylum requests from Syria? And he got up on his righteous high horse and sort of tried to virtue signal, make Richard Tice look bad by saying, no, that's not been on our radar at the moment. All we're thinking about is how we can help and do this, that, and the other. And he really tried to make Richard Tice look like the bad guy, and which is fair enough, I suppose. Politics is politics. But literally an hour later, the Home Office then announced that it was suspending asylum applications from Syria. So the guy, I mean, it's just typical Labour. They are wandering around like a blind man in a dark room. It's just, they haven't got a clue what they're doing. And as you said, It is the disasters are happening one wheel nut at a time as those wheels are coming off the wagon. And part of me enjoys it. I'm not going to lie. To sit here and watch the disaster unfold is quite satisfying because that's what we've said was going to happen. We said that if Labour get in, it's going to be an absolute disaster. The problem is, and this is more of a kind of realistic point, is how much of this can this country take over the next 5 years? Yeah. And that is a concern.
In terms of the flip-flopping, we talked about the flip-flopping with Rayner saying there's no crisis, and then the next we have a crisis. Same thing yesterday with Lammy. This isn't even on the table. And then Yvette Cooper comes out later on in the day and says it is very much in the table and we're doing it. Seem to be following suit with the like of Germany, who said they're suspending all new applicants for refugees from Syria. Don't know what's going on there. And the term that seems to be used at the minute is things are moving quickly on the ground. So when any politicians are being put on the spot, especially Labour, can you please give us your take on what's happening? Well, you know, things are moving very quickly on the ground. It would be wrong of me to commentate on this as per right now. It's not wrong if you and I can do some cursory, backstory reading and give a comment on it. Surely, Lee, surely the people that are supposed to be running the country should be fit to give a statement other than, well, things are moving quickly on the ground. I can't really comment on that right now. It's a cop-out.
That's what I would say if I didn't have a sodding clue what was going on. That would be my kind of, oh crap, what do I say? I don't know what's happening in Syria. Can someone please brief me? Okay, well, just say this in front of just tell them that we're just monitoring the situation. Okay, go. And pushes Yvette Cooper out in front of the cameras, and she just spouts absolute nonsense. That's what we saw. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Yvette Cooper's face, when I watched the statement, was a face that just was blank. She just did not have any look on her face that she understood what was going on at all. Now, let's be fair to the government, because, for balance, it is the right decision to suspend asylum applications from Syria without a doubt for two reasons. One, because there is an unfolding situation. We don't quite know where the dust is going to settle. Look, even I said it better than Yvette Cooper, right? Because I'm sincere when I say that's a sincere point to make. No one actually knows what's going to happen at the moment. We can guess. And this is where Labour probably wouldn't be drawn into making these guesses, that we've got a new regime that's in place, and I'm laughing because I'm just about to try and pronounce it, and it was HTS is the easiest one again, was it? That's how the media are pronouncing it.
Yeah,
you're gonna have a go at pronouncing
Hayat Tahrir al-Sham.
Beautifully rolls off the tongue.
HTS.
Yeah. And like we were discussing before we came on, not just Yvette Cooper's statement, but we had Angela Rayner, who was asked about this as well on one of the Sunday news channels. And she openly, almost enthusiastically, it's almost like she's read what she's supposed to say, but not quite got the emotion right. Yeah. So she's read the bit, okay, I'm supposed to welcome the fact that Assad's gone. Okay. Right. And she goes out on camera. It's like she warmly welcomes the fact that Assad has gone without actually realizing or being grown up enough to realize that actually what could be coming after Assad could be even worse. There's none of that. We just warmly welcome the fact that this nasty man's gone. Don't get me wrong. I think most sane people think Assad is a monster. The systematic and widespread torture of his own people. He's used chemical weapons on his own people. He's a bad man, right? There's absolutely no doubt about it. But these people who are coming up next are a mixture of Al-Qaeda, as I understand it, Al-Qaeda and ISIS. They are not good people. Now, they've made some sounds that they want to try and show that they're nicer than Assad. So I think they've given some amnesty to the soldiers that have been fighting against them to say, look, if you drop your weapons and you come and join us, we'll be really nice to you, to try and show the Western world that they're not going to be, like ISIS monsters or whatever. But like, going back to what you're saying, like Yvette Cooper, even though she didn't know why she was saying it, like she said it, you do have to wait a little bit to see what's going to happen, because there is a security risk there. There'll be people that are fleeing potentially Syria who are responsible for some very, very bad crimes, some war crimes potentially. So it is the right thing to do. What I think we should be doing is what the Austrians are doing, and they are proactively repatriating people back to Syria, which I think is a very polite way of saying that they're deporting people out there as quickly as possible. And I think that's the right thing to do. What we should be doing is we should be before we do anything is encouraging people to go back to Syria. I think that is the right thing to do. I think, to be honest, there'll be a lot of Syrians that will want to go back to Syria. The genuine refugees, the ones that left, who wanted to leave a war zone and have come over to Western countries, including our own, the genuine ones, they will want to go back and help rebuild their own country. So I think that should be thoroughly supported. But we didn't get anything like that, any kind of in-depth response from Yvette Coopers. You're not going to, because this Labour government, there isn't the intelligence or intellectual capacity for them to think this through and have a grown-up discussion about world events, because they haven't got a bloody clue what they're doing.
It's interesting as well the way people are presented to the. I mean, like, let's be honest. Everyone has a skeleton in their closet. There's many skeletons. I think we talked about this the last time you were on as well. Nobody's perfect out there. No world leaders for sure, and they're all got their fingers in various pies. And the picture that's being painted of Assad. I was checking yesterday, doing a little research on post Gaddafi Libya, post Iraq Hussein,
Yeah.
and we all know the monsters that these men were portrayed to be in the media. And who's perfect? Yeah, we've all got skeletons in the closet. But since Gaddafi was removed in Libya, Libya went to the dogs. I saw a review that was done after 5 years, and people were saying, look, the infrastructure in the country's gone. It's went to the dogs. The cost of living's 4 to 5 times higher. There's no availability for medical equipment. The same thing with Iraq. The same thing arguably could be said with what will happen now in Syria. And the line is, again, things are moving fast in the ground. It's too early to call this what will happen at the minute. But this organization that has taken over yesterday said, Starmer said no decision had been made yet on whether the UK government would remove HTS or Hayat Tahrir al-Sham from a list of banned terror organizations after the rebels led the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. So they were prescribed as a terrorist organization in the UK after being called an alias of Al-Qaeda in 2017. Means the UK can't have any communication with the group. So here we have the UK government allocating this group Al-Qaeda effectively affiliates, or another version of Al-Qaeda terrorist organization in 2017. Now they've overtoppled Assad. Now Starmer's humming and hawing about whether or not to remove them from the prescribed terrorist organization against the backdrop of British pensioners and young mothers that are in jail at the minute for putting offensive, quote, racially inciting hatred posts on Facebook. And here we have a guy that's just toppled Assad, this guy.
And then they all of a sudden
Mohammed al-Jolani. This guy leading Syria's Islamist Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group, and Starmer's looking at him going, well, maybe we need to take him off the terrorist group list while we have pensioners in jail for.
It makes me wonder whether he's looking at this group and thinking about representing them in as he has represented a lot of other quite. Was it Hizb Tahrir? I can never pronounce it correctly. He represented them when Germany wanted to ban them, or did successfully ban them, and he represented these. This vile group. So yeah, Keir Starmer has not got a very good reputation when it comes, or Labour in general have not got a very good reputation when it comes to these vile groups.
No.
But go on.
I was going to say there, he was speaking from Saudi Arabia, so he's over in the Middle East at the moment.
Yeah.
He said, and this is what he said concerning this prescribed terrorist organization. He said, quote, "We have to work to make sure that this is a peaceful opportunity for Syria." And then he goes on to say, we've seen it before, he says, in other parts of history where we think there's going to be a turning point, and it turns out not necessarily to be a better future that we'd hope for, a la Iraq, a la Libya, and various other places. So that's what I mean. We're sitting at the minute where he's sitting going, you know what? There's no way of telling how this is going to turn out. Things are moving fast on the ground. We've got Angela Rayner representing us. We've got David Lammy. We've got Yvette Cooper. It's a gallery of incompetence of the highest order, representing Britain at a very, very crucial time. I suppose the only thing they have done that's right in this is to say, right, no more Syrian refugees as per right now, and let's look at repatriating them ASAP. That's the only thing I think we could take away as a positive from this.
I agree, and that is the only positives. The rest of it is just a walking disaster. I mean, and it is going to be things like this over the next 5 years that are going to expose this Labour government for the actual competence, or the incompetence, I should say, that they display. You know, when these things happen, it really does shine a light on their lack of experience, and you can just see it a mile off. And like you say, people that we've got there, I mean, Angela Rayner, Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy, Foreign Secretary. I mean, it's a globe. We are a laughing stock, and they are a global embarrassment. And it's things like this that will expose it. And like you say, we see it play out. They haven't got a clue what they're doing, and it is so easy to spot now. And as more things like this happen, it'll become more apparent. This is why I firmly believe. I'm going slightly off topic. I do firmly believe that this is a single-term Labour government. As long as the right wing get their act together, the centre right and the right, and we unite properly, the next election is in the bag. These Labour parties, I mean, if they're, it's not going to get any better by the end of this term, and it's things like this that are going to help expose it.
And every time you and I talk, another wheel nut comes off, or another nut comes off the wheel. And and by the way, it doesn't take four wheels to come off the vehicle for the vehicle to be not roadworthy, or it just takes one wheel to come off. And that wheel, the first one, is very close to being off. Just to wrap this up, I noticed, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but you alluded to it when you talked about the Yvette Cooper video that I saw myself last night. I mean, I don't know who's doing the social media or the PR for the government at the minute, Lee. But I mean, we try our best, to try and look semi-professional when we're doing these things, and, reasonably presentable. Yvette Cooper, if you watched that video with the sound off and you didn't know what she was talking about, it looks like a grainy hostage video. It looks like it's like she's pleading for her life, and she looks grey and washed out, and the camera framing is terrible. And then you put the sound on, and her delivery vocally is awful. I saw another one last night with Starmer, and there's a lot in the framing of videos. And whoever shot Starmer's video from last night, where he talked about pledging another 11 million of aid immediately to help 370,000 Syrians who were worst affected, it looked like the cameraman, he was leaning over the cameraman at a bad angle. So either the cameraman had fallen to the ground and, maybe twisted his back, couldn't get up, and decided to keep recording anyway. Or Starmer, it's the worst thing you can do when you're looking down at someone, because it's a very, how would you say, it's a very unsettling position to have someone staring down at you. At least look at someone in the eye by looking up at them. But who's coming up? Who's doing the PR in number 10 Downing Street? And if whoever it is, are they Russian agents? Are they Assad sympathizers trying to make the government look even worse than they already do?
They're so unprofessional. I mean, they all look, Keir Starmer especially, I don't know if you know, you probably have noticed this, he looks like a rabbit caught in the headlights in most of his, not just interviews, but his own blooming pre-prepared speeches. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that he asked for the release of the sausages. Yes. He hasn't got the intelligence. Well, he is an intelligent man. He's just, I thought this Labour government was going to be a disaster. Most right-minded people thought this Labour government was going to be a disaster. But even I did not realise, or even most people I probably think feel this way, how bad Keir Starmer actually is. This guy's, as he keeps telling us, Director of Public Prosecutions. He's had very public-facing jobs. So you'd at least think that these things that you're mentioning, that he'd be able to give a good interview. He'd be able to embellish well if he needs to embellish. But he's surrounded by idiots, and he himself has turned out to be incredibly, I think, actually, in fairness, surprisingly incompetent. Because if you get yourself to the lofty heights of Director of Public Prosecutions, he's been knighted. It's Sir Keir Starmer. You think that someone like that is going to be able to do interviews like this? And we're not even talking politics at the moment. We're just talking about having a presence in front of the camera. And time again, especially this relaunch speech, I mean, It was so bad. I mean, I couldn't even find someone on the left, a Labour supporter, that could praise this speech, apart from the usual spinners that went out in front of the media. There was genuinely, there was nothing good about it. It was robotic, monotonous, vacuous nonsense. Absolutely nothing in it was new at all. And I sat there and it was the whole, 20, 30 minutes was a complete waste of time. The most interesting bit was the end when the journalists put some pressure on him. And to be fair, they did. What's new? He didn't even mention immigration. For someone who's apparently got that as his mate, and he tried to get out of it, didn't he, by saying, "Oh, well, I didn't mention it, but it's part of our foundations. It's part of fixing the foundations. You'd expect that to be there." And what absolute load of nonsense! Yeah. He's trying to bury it because he knows that he's not going to stop the boats. He's not going to bring down mass migration. He's got no intention of doing it. They're lying to us, just like every other party has lied to us for the last 14. Or actually, for the last 20 years, they've all repeatedly told us they're going to bring down immigration. Then they sort of boot it into the long grass, if we're lucky, or if not, they just blatantly lie directly to our faces and tell us that they're going to do it, just like Boris Johnson and Priti Patel did. Yeah, we're going to bring it down, put it in our manifesto. What's the first thing they do? They open the floodgates up. They're all lied to us. So that's exactly what I expect to happen with this Labour government. That's why they're going to be a single-term government only. And as long as the right get their act together, this absolute disaster will be booted out of office, and hopefully we won't see him again for a very long time.
Amen to that. Very well put. And if you're in any doubt what we're saying, just if you're feeling masochistic, go and check out Yvette Cooper's press releases. Go and look at Keir Starmer. Or if you're feeling really, really, really twisted, watch Ed Miliband's videos.
Oh, we didn't even mention him.
With ukuleles prancing around in wind farms, singing songs and likening himself to the Batman's latest Hollywood blockbuster. I kid you not. That's the British government at the minute. So anyway, Lee, really appreciate your time this morning. For anyone that wants to connect in with Lee, please do take the time to check out. He's very prolific on social media. Check out his Twitter or his X page. The links for that will be in the description box in the pinned comment underneath that video. And I'm going to wrap this up as per now. So Lee Harris, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Rick Munn, No Risk, No Reward Media, over and out.